I'm Monique, and today we're going to learn about imagery. Well, first, to talk about imagery, we must discuss what an image is. An image is a word or a phrase that appeals to one of our senses. Images can help us create a mental picture, hear a sound, feel texture or temperature, or even taste a sweet, sour, or salty flavor. Writers use imagery to convey feelings that are often difficult to describe in mere words. The writer is trying to paint an image. Well, now that you guys know what an image is and what imagery is, you must know that there are 5 types of imagery. The first type of imagery is auditory imagery. The word auditory stems from the Latin word audire. And you may be wondering, how do you spell auditory? Well, no fear, I'm here to help you. You spell it A-U-D-I-T-O-R-Y. Examples of auditory imagery is music, silence, or any form of hearing that the author is trying to get his or her audience to understand. The next type of imagery is visual imagery. This can be seen when an author is trying to describe what he or she sees. And you spell visual, V-I-S-U-A-L. An example of visual imagery can be colors, shapes, patterns, or size. Anything that the author is trying to get you to see or visualize. Now that you guys have learned the 2 most prevalent forms of imagery, we must take a look and explore what imagery is all about. And we will do this by listening to the show excerpt by James Stevens.
And straightway, like a bell, came low and clear the slow, sad murmur of the distant seas. And in the hush of waters was the sound of pebbles rolling round, forever rolling with a hollow sound, and bubbling seaweeds as the waters go swish to and fro, their long, cold tentacles of slimy gray.
As you can see, James Stevens used a lot of imagery. Let's take a look at some of the imagery, like bell, low, clear, slow, murmur, hush, pebbles rolling around, hollow sound, bubbling, swish. These all evoke the senses of hearing. So remember, whenever an author is trying to convey what he or she is hearing, it is auditory imagery. So let's look at visual imagery from the excerpt. When the author said seaweeds, to and fro, long, great, that was all visual sensory that was being used. The third form of imagery is tactile imagery. Tactile refers to the sense of touching things. Tactile imagery describes how things feel to the touch. Texture, movement, and temperature are all forms of tactile imagery. If I were to say, the frog was slimy in her hands, this is tactile imagery clearly because it describes what it felt like to touch the frog. Tactile can be hard to even pronounce, but let alone spell. You spell tactile T-A-C-T-I-L-E. The fourth type of imagery is olfactory imagery. Olfactory refers to that which we can smell. Thus, olfactory imagery refers to descriptions of smells and odors. So, olfactory imagery can simply be a nice fragrance or a bad odor. Let's take a look as I read an example of olfactory imagery. As I walked into my house after practice, I met with the delicious scent of freshly baked chocolate chip crunchy cookies. They were my favorite. I couldn't wait to devour them. Did you guys think about the last time you had chocolate chip cookies? Or perhaps how it felt for the person in the example, to have walked into their home and smelled the cookies? Because if you did, you just experienced olfactory imagery. Olfactory is spelled Olfactory. Olfactory imagery. Olfactory is spelled Olfactory. The last form of imagery is gustatory imagery. You spell gustatory Gustatory. Gustatory refers to how things taste. An example of describing a taste can be sour, sweet, or even bitter. So, to test what I have just taught you guys, let's listen to an excerpt by William Bryant. It's called The Gladness of Nature.
Is this a time to be cloudy and sad, when our Mother Nature laughs around, when even the deep blue heavens look glad, and gladness breathes from the blossoming ground? There are notes of joy from the haying-bird and wren, and the gossip of swallows through all the sky. The ground squirrel gaily chirps by his den, and the wilding bee hums merrily by. The clouds are at play in the azure space, and their shadows at play on the bright green veil, and here they stretch to the frolic chase, and there they roll on the easy gale. There's a dance of leaves in the aspen bower, there's a titter of wind in that beechen tree, there's a smile on the fruit, and a smile on the flower, and a laugh in the brook that runs to the sea. And look at the broad-faced sun, how he smiles on the dewy earth that smiles in his ray, on the leaping waters and gay young isles. Aye, look, and he'll smile thy gloom away.
The poem is trying to convey the message to not be sad or gloomy like nature can be sometimes. The writer wants you to feel like Mother Nature is laughing and being happy. The poem has a positive message and speaks through nature. The author personifies the elements in nature to make you feel delighted. He makes the objects dance, smile, laugh, and play. Features: William Bryant, the author. All in all, whenever an author is trying to paint a picture to his audience, he or she is using imagery. So, let's have a mini review. There are 5 types of imagery. The most prevalent forms are auditory and visual. Auditory describes what we hear, so music and noise. Visual describes what we see, colors, patterns, size, or shapes. Tactile describes what we touch or feel, so this can be texture or even temperature. Olfactory describes what we smell, fragrances or bad odors, and gustatory describes what we taste, whether it's sour or bitter. For you guys' final test, I'm going to ask you guys 5 questions. The first question is the statement, "The glorious sunset was beautiful to behold." Is this a form of imagery that appeals to your senses? The answer is yes. It appeals to the sense of smell. The second question I have for you guys is, if I were to say the dark chocolate Hershey bar was sweet, what form of imagery appeals to which senses? If you said sight and taste, then you are correct. The third question I have for you guys, in this sentence, when Amanda began her hike at dawn, the sky lit up with pink, reds, and yellows. This form of imagery appeals to which sense? If you said sight, then you are correct. The fourth question is, in this sentence, the bell clanged loudly. Which form of imagery appeals to which sense? If you said sound, then you are correct. The last question is, in this sentence, the sun beckoned me to follow the beam of light warming my feet. This form of imagery appeals to which sense? If you said touch, then you are correct. Thank you guys for listening to my lesson about imagery. I hope that you guys are more informed about what imagery is and how it can be used and how it can be spotted within literary text.